Hey guys, my name is Brenna Johnston and I am this week's group leader for Group 4. My assigned chapter for Module 3 was Chapter 7 of the book About Behaviorism by B.F. Skinner, which covered the aspect of thinking. Within this chapter, Skinner proposes and discusses thinking from a behaviorist point of view. This view opposes the mentalist view of thinking, which suggests that the environment moves into the mind and becomes experience. However, such experience becomes general purpose cognitive behavior, according to mentalists, when utilized to perceive the world in a certain way or for bettering oneself. They do not believe that such experience or the environment has much of an effect on or role in abstract or conceptual thinking, if any at all. And it's clear that Skinner is pretty fed up by the mentalistic and psychological views and claims about thinking and behavior. At the beginning of the chapter, he makes sure to add that three cognitive psychologists around the time of publication had recently published a book of their own that introduced total internalization, and upon completion of that book, then referred to themselves as, in quotes, subjective behaviorists. When introducing his behavioristic view of thinking, Skinner notes that the term thinking has alternative meanings such as behaving weakly, when using it to say things like, I think I will go, or I think this is the correct answer. This version of the word is not the topic of the chapter or the behavioristic view of thinking. Skinner instead turns the focus toward the, as he says, more important use of the term, referring to the covert behavior of thinking. Covert means that it's not openly acknowledged or displayed. So thinking is considered a covert behavior because we can't see what a person is thinking because it is private to that person. Covert behavior mainly applies to verbal behavior because a person doesn't need to use environmental support to think or talk to themselves effectively, as the person is both the speaker and the listener. However, nonverbal behavior may also be covert because, and I'll use Skinner's example, a chess player may have moves in mind based on other moves he has made, since he played the game covertly in the past in order to test the consequences for future use. Skinner also notes that covert behavior is almost always acquired in the overt form or externally, and that no one has ever shown that the covert form achieves anything that is out of reach of the overt. This basically means that thinking is a behavior which forms as a result of external stimuli and experiences, and is the base of his argument throughout the entire chapter. In the section regarding the control of stimuli, Skinner discusses our perception of the world around us based on our senses. We're able to take in external stimuli we enjoy, like the sight and smell of flowers in the park or the sound of birds chirping. But we're also able to block out the stimuli that we find painful through plugging our ears, covering our eyes, or holding our breath. Some of these behaviors are due to genetic and evolutionary means, while others are a result of consequences and contingencies of reinforcement. A behavioral process introduced in this section that is produced by contingencies is discrimination. In discrimination, we distinguish what is important in a given setting because of the past contingencies that were important. So let's say that if I was driving and thinking about my day, I would still be able to pay attention to traffic signs because of past contingencies which allow me to discern that that is an important factor in that moment. Concepts also involve contingencies of reinforcement rather than invented concepts such as arithmetical concept. The example provided in the text regards two children who are taught to say 9 when given the problem 3 plus 6. Now, when they are given the problem 6 plus 3, one child looks puzzled while the other answers 9. And while one might say that the child who looked puzzled had only learned the answer to a specific question, the 3 plus 6, the other had the arithmetical concept down. However, the concept could have been acquired by the child having been previously taught to say 9 when given the problem 6 plus 3 also. Search and recall is another cognitive activity affected by environmental stimuli and contingencies. Searching is a result of genetic endowment because it's needed for survival, such as in searching for food. And it's also due to past contingencies. An example is when we lose something, we tend to first go back and look in places where that item has been in the past. In recalling, it is thought that we search for and access previously made copies of stimuli, such as faces, names, dates, places, etc. But in behavior analysis, probability replaces accessibility, since contingencies affect a person and are not stored to be accessed later on. If a word is familiar to the person, there is a greater initial probability of the person being able to recall that word. In solving a problem, the solution is more than just producing an answer or response, it's making that response more probable, often by changing the environment. And we can do this by grouping things according to similarities, making steps, and creating all sorts of strategies to increase this probability. But whatever the strategy, we're likely to have learned it through the problematic contingencies we were exposed to in the past. The chapter gets rather interesting as Skinner discusses the potential reasoning behind creative behavior. And just as accidental traits in an organism are selected because they contribute to that organism's survival, accidental variations in behavior are selected by their reinforcing consequences, which is an example of operant conditioning. This accidental variation in behavior is what is considered that original creative behavior. And after something positive comes about as a result of that creative behavior, say writing an award-winning song, that person might try to manipulate and deliberately vary the environment in order to produce more positive results, such as writing in various settings. Skinner concludes Chapter 7 by discussing the structure of mind and the thinking mind, where he reiterates that all we have learned and how we think are in some way or another a result of genetic endowment and the environment, though it's harder to prove what was caused by the environment because much of this we can't observe or study. He compares the development of the mind to the development of speech and language, where a person who studies language can speak extensively on a child's vocabulary, syntax, grammar, etc., but can't expand upon that child's exposure to language all throughout his or her lifetime, since they're not with that child 24/7. Because of this, there's no way to acquire a realistic account for the development of speech and language. Similarly, we can't accurately study the growth of the mind because while a child may display behavior indicating an understanding of the concept of inertia, we can observe the countless times he or she has pushed, pulled, twisted things, etc., in developing that concept. And that concludes my summary on Chapter 7. Please feel free to reply to my video with questions and I'll do my best to answer them. But before I end this video, I'd like to start a discussion with you all and ask a question. My question to you is, do you believe that the behavior of thinking as a whole is a result of external stimuli and consequences? If you don't believe this, please explain, and if you do, please provide an example of how these have affected your thinking. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from you.